Everyone, good evening. Good to see such a great turnout tonight. Thanks for being here. We're going to get started in just a minute. Okay, well, we might have a few more people jump on, but we'll go ahead and get started so we can stay on track and get all this good information out to you. So thanks for being here tonight. My name's Mindy O'Neill. I'm the Executive Director of the Kolt Climate Housing Research Center. We're located in Fairbanks, Alaska. We're a 501c3 nonprofit organization that was created out of the home builders industry. And for 20 years, we've developed building science and technologies that have aided in construction for cold climates. And we continue that work and our work to catalyze housing in Alaska. So part of our mission is to reach out to communities across the state and share the information and the latest technologies and the latest information of home efficiency and building construction. And so we're really glad to have the support of our sponsors this evening to make available this class to each of you. So wanted to give a shout out to our sponsors who allow us to have this free class, GVA, which is our utility up in Fairbanks, AHFC, the Alaska Housing Finance Corporation, big supporters, Southeast, Information Insights, and Solarize Fairbanks, as well as the National Renewable Energy Lab. So tonight we are going to hear all about solar, and we have, before that, a speaker from the Department of Energy to just give us an oversight of some of the tax credits and incentives that are available with the new IRA bill, and give us an oversight on that. So we'll welcome Madeline Saltzman from the Department of Energy. Then we'll have Jamie Hansen with the Information Insights, who is going to give us just a brief description about the solarize campaigns around the state, and then into the meat of the heart of the issue tonight, which is solar basics for homeowners with Kolt and Amanda Garvey, who are with Sunstone Electric. So Madeline, take it away.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, and great to be here with folks. As Mindy mentioned, my name's Madeline Salzman. I work at the U.S. Department of Energy out in Washington, D.C. So you'll have to manage with the top lighting that is coming at me and mostly hitting my shoulders right now. But it is dark here on the East Coast. If it's all right, I will share my screen just so I can talk a little bit about some of the different rebates and tax incentives and just the various elements that are involved in the Inflation Reduction Act. So as Mindy mentioned, I'm at the U.S. Department of Energy. What is really exciting about the Inflation Reduction Act is it's really a whole of government approach to managing the climate crisis and really trying to deal with issues head on of making sure people have access to clean, efficient, affordable energy resources all over the country right at home. So my core job right now is to focus on rollout of the home energy rebate programs, which are a component here. But I'll talk a little bit as well about some of the other elements that are ongoing. And all right, so we'll just jump into it. So I'll just say that the Inflation Reduction Act passed in August to make everything confusing for everybody. There was a law that was passed about a year prior called the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, together between, sometimes we call them Bill and Ira, and it sounds like they're two men that we could do a whole campaign around that. But Bill and Ira represent some of the largest swing in U.S. history that we've ever taken at addressing clean energy access throughout the entire country. The U.S. Department of Energy got about $62 billion in clean energy deployment programs through the infrastructure law, and got about $34 billion in clean energy deployment programs through the Inflation Reduction Act. So between those, we're talking about around $100 billion just at the U.S. Department of Energy. And of course, there's other agencies that are involved in deploying infrastructure, doing transportation work, working on housing and urban development. So there's a lot of agencies that are involved here. I highly recommend, if you haven't yet, checking out the Clean Energy for All website that the White House is currently hosting. They're trying their best to kind of consolidate all of the various elements that are ongoing throughout the various agencies, and trying to make it as simple of a message as possible, while recognizing the fact that all those billions of dollars comes lots of programs that are all at various stages of rollout. So here you can see just a sense of the various types of programs that are involved specifically in the Inflation Reduction Act. So that's really where my current work is focused. The Inflation Reduction Act has about $370 billion worth of clean energy investment funds going through various tax credits, programs, agencies, et cetera. So this is really to just give you a sense. So this first block, this home energy rebates block, is actually what I spend most of my day working on, and really focused on two provisions that make up this $9 billion. So all of these dollar amounts and kind of categories represent one or more provisions that are included within the Inflation Reduction Act. So there are two home energy rebate provisions. I can talk more about those, but one is focused on discounts for home efficiency projects, and the discounts are based on the project cost and how much energy they're likely to save. And then home electrification projects that focus on installing efficient electric technologies in households. But one thing I really want to flag is the biggest group of funds is right here, the energy tax credits. And so those function a little bit differently. The rest of these are all programs, which is to say that there are, staff kind of deploying spending money out from the government, whereas of course the tax credits show up on your taxes, where instead of paying more into the government every year, you can get a reduction on the amount that you owe in taxes based on certain types of installations. The next largest chunk that I just want to call out is also one at the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, and that's the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund right here. And that is an actual deployment program that is $27 billion that will be coming out of EPA. And sometimes you maybe have heard people talk about this as a green bank provision. It technically is more flexible than necessarily just being a green bank, but is focused on financing and making available funding for greenhouse gas reduction projects. But as you can see, there's a lot going on here. These first four are all at DOE. As I mentioned, this is really the one that I focus on. And you can see things kind of across the board, also at HUD, USDA, NOAA, and other agencies as well. So I know this is kind of an eye chart. The good news is that I just copy and pasted this table from this website link, so I can make sure everybody has the slides after this presentation, and you can see this in a easier to read format. But this is the DOE's summary of the various tax credits that have been made available through the Inflation Reduction Act. So, and one thing that I think is really useful about this table is it helps you understand what is available for taxes right now. You only got 4 days left if you installed something in 2022. but also showing you how it changes. So starting this year, if you make any of these installations that are listed on the left, hopefully you can see my cursor, then you are eligible on next year's or this year's taxes when you're filing them for a reduction in the tax owed. You'll notice, for instance, that for clean electricity products like solar, that amount is staying the same at 30% of the cost of the solar electricity. The big thing that's happening is this is being extended all the way out to 2032. And so this is really valuable. I know that maybe is not important to some people that are just curious for the tax credit to exist the year they are doing the installation, but it is really useful to the industry overall when we have some stability and businesses can make decisions about growing, hiring, beefing up their sales team, investing in professional development, all these types of things that make businesses more efficient and grow, if they can have some reliability about how the tax credits will continue to be available into the future. So just kind of a wonky point of interest, I guess, but it's really exciting to move some of these tax credits that did already exist, even if they're staying at the same level, to have some stability through the next decade to really support these industries in growing. Another element for clean electricity products is you can see that battery storage, if you installed it last year or years prior, there was not an applicable tax credit, but that now matches at 30% of the cost. You'll notice some of these towards the bottom have asterisks, and you could do many of these items, but if you completed many of them, then you'd be subject to a cap of $1,200 per year for things that you installed. So it's just kind of worth noting, if you're going to claim a bunch of these at once, there's a limit even if the cost is higher. And then just an overall note is that, especially for some of the items that are new that haven't existed on previous tax credit or previous tax years, the IRS is working to publish updated guidance on meeting these needs. I know in particular one that we're very curious about is the home energy audits, where it's not a ton, it's 30% of the cost up to $150, but for the rebates work that we're doing, we really want to be able to recommend energy audits that folks can also get a tax credit on. So, we're working on collaborating with the Department of Treasury on figuring out what these audit requirements might look like so that we can give good guidance to folks as this guidance is released in the future from IRS. So that's kind of a high-level summary of the tax credits, and I wanted to spend a little bit of time just talking about the rebate program that I'm focused on. So I work in the Office of State and Community Energy Programs at the U.S. Department of Energy. It was an office created to deploy about $16 billion in funds from the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, as well as the Inflation Reduction Act, and really focused on the elements of rubber meeting the road, so to speak, on clean energy deployment, working with communities, talking to folks in around the country and working for businesses on what they need and how we can support them. Here you can see some of the programs that add up to that $16 billion that are coming out of our office. And you can see this big bubble that doesn't fit on the screen is $8.8 billion for home energy rebates that I'm focused on, as well as some of this building efficiency workforce training at $260 million. There's lots of other programs here as well that my colleagues work on, but all of these are, amounts of funding that have been increased from these two laws. I won't spend a ton of time here because I don't want to take up too much of y'all's time, but I'll just say that, as I mentioned, the home energy rebate programs are authorized through the Inflation Reduction Act. The funds are not yet available in terms of if you are doing something in your house right now, it's not yet available to reach you, but we are having some money come out as soon as possible for the state energy offices so that they can get to hiring folks and planning their grants. and rebate programs overall. So the overall objectives of these programs are to help households enjoy lower energy bills and more comfortable homes, make it easier for folks to access and implement energy improvements, attract and retain a qualified workforce, and spur durable market demand for residential efficiency and electrification. And one thing you'll notice is solar is not on this list. Of course, solar is eligible through the tax credits. There are some of these elements that are also tax creditable for whatever the remainder is on the project cost. But one thing I want to highlight, especially for folks in Alaska, is it can be really useful to electrify or to improve your electrical wiring systems at the same time as getting solar, or in coordination with getting solar. If your heating or system is not currently powered by electricity, your solar can only go so far in terms of charging the electricity that is being used in the home. But of course, you can, by having electrified heating sources or water heating or what have you, there's more opportunities to put that solar to use, so to speak, in your home. So there's a lot of options here. Some of these rebates are not particularly prescriptive. It's just based on how much energy you save. I won't spend a ton of time here, but I'll just say that, you know, all of this money essentially goes from DOE to states and territories and Indian tribes to then deploy the programs themselves. So DOE is providing the rules and guidance for how to do this, but DOE will not be deploying the program. If you want to get these rebates once the state is set up, you'll be kind of working through the state to have access to those. This is kind of an eye chart. This is also available on our website, but I'll just say that the amount of money that a certain project can access in rebates will depend on a few factors. One is the household income. There's more money available per project for households that are below 80% area median income. It also depends on either the technology being installed or the energy savings that's predicted from the project. And then also, third, depends on the project cost. So one area that excites a lot of people is that if for households below 80% area median income that are installing a combination of these technologies, they can get 100% of project costs covered up to $14,000 as long as these caps are met. Most of the time, you can't get 100% of project costs covered. And there could be scenarios where, you know, the total cost of an appliance is higher than this, so it won't be quite 100. But it's a really great opportunity for households that maybe haven't had funds to access these higher efficiency technologies in the past. And I wanted to just give some examples for Alaska specifically. So the Alaska Energy Authority is the group that will be getting the funds from DOE. There are about $37 million in efficiency rebate funds for the Alaska Energy Authority, and then a similar amount, $37.1 million for electrification rebates, which we go into more detail of the difference and similarities between those on our website. But currently, right now, Alaska Energy Authority is eligible to apply for almost $2 million in what we're calling early administrative funds to help grow their program capacity prior to release of the rest of the funds. So we're hoping to release full program guidance and the rest of the funds later this summer. But right now, if they want to get started on getting plans together, that is something that Alaska, as long as both the other states are able to apply for. Also, Alaskan Indian tribes and Alaskan Native corporations will be eligible for a portion of $225 million. That's because there's a set aside in the electrification rebates specifically for Indian tribes. And, you know, we've been trying to work through with our colleagues some different scenarios where you can imagine somebody that's able to get some elements of a project covered through weatherization assistance, existing programs, as well as applying rebates where they maybe could even access more than $14,000, in this case up to $20,000 in retrofits delivered to a home. So this is just to say we have not yet published the funding application and program guidance other than that early administrative funds. We are getting close. This is supposed to happen in July, but we've been working through developing our program guidance to get this money out the door as soon as possible. And with that, that's our program website. And if you're curious to be in touch, that is our email. I will stop sharing my screen. Sorry, I kept tipping further as I was reading it.
Thanks. Mindy, am I good to go ahead? All right. Well, I'm going to share my screen, but while I'm doing that, Mindy and Carrie, I think, are going to go ahead and launch a survey to learn a little bit more about there it is, who is on right now. I'm here to bring what Madeline was saying and bring it a little bit more into the Alaska context. And then Colton, I think, and Amanda will do that even more. So we're going to take a minute to talk about solarize campaigns in Alaska. So these are community campaigns that are aimed at making it easier and more accessible to get solar. Right now, there are 2 campaigns in 2023, one in Fairbanks, in the Fairbanks North Star Borough, and one in the Mat-Su Borough. And both of those have vetted installers so that each individual participant is able to go ahead and choose who they participate through. And those are a list of the installers right there. It differs by community. And a really fantastic element of both campaigns this year is a give back pledge. So in addition to being able to access some technical support and be motivated, a percentage of the total kilowatts installed will be donated back by the installers to either households or community organizations that are selected by the community. So we're all really excited about that element of the campaign this year. And the fantastic thing is that all of that is on top of what Madeline was talking about, which is there are these amazing federal tax credits, right? So there's a 30% tax credit for homes and businesses. There's also a new opportunity that's developing, which is a direct pay for tax exempt organizations, government entities, rural electric cooperatives. And I'm pretty sure that Amanda is going to talk in even more detail about that. But also there's a U.S. Department of Agriculture grant that's available for small businesses, and that has a 50% grant opportunity. It is competitive, but as you can see, the discounts and the grants stack up. And at least for the solarize campaigns, that's on top of what are confirmed competitive retail rates. So it's a really exciting opportunity this year with all of the federal opportunities and the new elements of the campaigns. And so if anyone wants more information on that REAP grant, the U.S. Department of Agriculture REAP grant, there's information. Misty Hull, she's in Palmer, and she's a state energy coordinator. And so there's some of her information right there. She's a great resource, rather busy, but fantastic resource. And then also, if you're interested in connecting, if you're in Fairbanks or in the Mat-Su, there's the email addresses, and that QR code is for Solarize Fairbanks. So please feel free to go ahead and click on that. And I think with that, I am done, and I'm going to hand it over to Kolt and Amanda. Thank you very much.
Wow, super fast. That was a lot of information. I'm Kolt. I'm with Sunstone Electric. This is my wife, Amanda. We are co-owners of Sunstone Electric in Palmer, Alaska. We are also solar installers and electrical contractors. And what we're going to do is go over just like the basics, the very ultimate basics of where to start when putting solar on your home. It's not an extremely technical PowerPoint. We kind of wanted to stay away from that. So this is, well, go ahead. Sorry, she's also my tech genius. You guys see that okay?
Yep, it looks great.
All right. So this is the introduction to solar for homeowners. Welcome. We initially had slated to have somebody from Solar Energy International here, but he wasn't able to make it tonight. He's on the East Coast, and something came up. So we're going to just be going over the very basics, financial considerations, and maybe some of the Alaska specific information, which is good because it looks like pretty much everybody in here is from Alaska. So this is meant to be just a high level overview of information. But if you have more specific questions, at the end, we've provided some useful links to help you kind of dive in a little bit further. And you can feel free to contact us afterwards if you have more questions, or maybe we didn't cover something that you were hoping to hear. Go ahead while we're going through and stop me if you have questions, or feel free to type them in the chat, and they'll relay them to us. Here we go. So yeah, before we start diving into solar, we're going to stop here and emphasize one thing. When we're talking about renewables in Alaska, there's no golden ticket. There's no one system that's going to take care of all of your energy needs and phase out gas or oil completely. They all kind of work together in different parts of the seasons, but the biggest thing before you start investing in like a solar array is you should try to conserve and reduce your electricity bill on your home or your business. Whether that means changing your usage patterns or upgrading like appliances and equipment in your house, and getting like higher performance units. Obviously there's some tax incentives for that also. So you'll kind of get like a twofold, like a stacking effect when you go to invest in a solar array. It's like personal finances. If you want to get rid of your bad debt before you invest in the next big, you want to get rid of your bad debt before you invest in the next big thing. Get rid of those really, really old, like 1950s refrigerators and 60s refrigerators. Maybe consider installing an energy monitor in your panel, and just kind of look at your usage. A lot of electrical contractors can show you how to use those and how to navigate the monitoring in those and kind of tell you what's going on. They're even really good at showing you what devices are going bad. You can tell by an increase in usage, etc. Energy performance upgrades by far have the highest rate of return of your investment, and you see savings immediately. It doesn't depend on the season. It doesn't depend on the weather. You just see the savings. We noticed a significant decrease in our energy bill at our home when we replaced all of our lights with LEDs. And I highly recommend not getting the direct replacement LEDs for like 4-foot fixtures, because in those 4-foot fixtures and 2-foot fixtures, you have ballasts and those use a lot of energy. So you really want to get like a direct wire LED or something like that. Really pay attention to your Energy Star ratings and your efficiencies. You have anything to add to that?
Yeah, so if you have older heating units, if you have a heating unit that's 10 to 15 years old and there's not much maintenance being done to it, you could lose as much as 20% of your boiler efficiency. So realistically, if you can invest in a more modern unit, those operate at 90 to 94% efficiency, and you'll start seeing those savings far faster than you would investing in a larger system. So we do highly recommend that you target energy efficiency, especially now that there are tax credits and rebates that are available, to invest in more immediate term options, and look into solar as well as an option afterwards.
Yeah, so getting back to just the solar portion, just the foundation of how solar energy works and a photovoltaic system actually works. This is like a normal, fairly normal residential application, I would say. A lot of systems you'll see, you won't see like you won't see this big string inverter on a lot of homes anymore. A lot of them work with like micro inverters, and we won't cover too much of that in here. If you have a lot of questions about that kind of stuff after, I'm happy to answer those. But basically what happens here is you have solar irradiance, you have photons hitting your solar module, and what that does is it knocks knocks an atom loose, and it basically circulates through a load and converts the inverter kind of converts it to a usable energy that the grid can use and your home can use. Not all systems work like that. Like I said, we're not going to get super scientific here, but this is a residential solar rooftop mounted application without battery storage. And we'll discuss the storage in a later slide, and we're going to keep this one pretty simple, but yeah, the solar in solution hits the roof mounted panels. The photons knock the electronics off the silicon atoms in the panel. The electrons flow through the wire, the PV wire, and it's converted into AC. Can anybody tell me why it's really important for it to get converted into AC? Just right off the top of your head, rather than DC voltage? Feel free to chime in. It's because most home appliances, with some limited exceptions, run off of AC voltage. A lot of your smaller devices have like plug-in battery or plug-in power packs that convert it back to DC. But most everything, most of your refrigerators, your lights, your boilers, all of that stuff runs off of AC. Sorry, guy.
It doesn't want to disappear.
We got something right in the middle of our screen. Sorry, guys. All right.
For what it's worth, we can't see it. So,
You can't.
Oh, you can't see
You
it.
can't
Okay,
see it.
great.
All right,
yeah,
great.
that's happened before, though. I'm so
I
sorry.
think the poll is stuck right in the middle of our screen.
Oh no, I'm
It-
sorry.
It ended and it just got stuck there. So
Yep, that was me then.
Sorry for that break. After being converted into AC, the power is distributed. Whatever's unused is distributed to your panel, or to your service, rather, which is the big panel usually on the outside of your house. And then it goes back on to the grid. If you're grid connected, there's a lot of different systems, like multi-mode systems where there's battery storage, or off-grid systems. Alaska's really famous for off-grid systems in rural Alaska. And it depends on where you're located. Your utilities own the grid, and they may or may not pay you depending on where you live, for the electricity that your home generates from its solar array. And we'll go over that a little bit more a little bit later, but a lot of your utilities will also have specific regulations that you will be required to abide by. Some of them require like engineered drawings, like Anchorage requires an engineered plan set. And the municipality requires that you have it inspected by a municipality inspector, and they have a bunch of guidelines for that. That is not a requirement that they have in Palmer and Wasilla for the municipality. Correct me if I'm wrong, but MEA pretty much kind of lets you run with it up to a certain amount of power. I don't know if anybody else wants to add to that. I think it's 25 kVA out here. And as long as you have a licensed bonded installer, they'll pretty much let you install it wherever you want. So that's the really cool thing about MEA specifically. Chugach requires engineered drawings. AVEC requires a drawing, and that's more rural Alaska. Alaska Village Electrical Cooperative that we worked with a lot. And they actually do like net metering and stuff like that. So they'll buy back power. MEA, Chugach, they'll buy back power at different rates per different utilities. But if you are connected to a local utility, you may be connected to one of these. You probably are if you're in here connected to one of these. Is it AT&T in Juneau? Alaska Power and Telephone? I forget.
there's IPEC and APNT in Southeast, which is not included in this slide, but
Yeah.
those are also one of the major power producers.
I think maybe we have some Southeast Alaska people in here. Thanks for coming if you are. I'm from Southeast Alaska. And worked a little bit with IPEC and APNT as well. And I do know both of those places net meter. Yeah, it's really important that you read over the application and approval process, no matter whose grid you're connected to. You know, phone calls, they usually have like an online portal that you can go to that will go over everything that you need to know about the installation. And your contractor, if you're not installing it and you have a contractor that you're using, they should also be working with the utility. Man, hire a contractor unless you are a solar install genius. Working with the contractor saves you a lot of heartache in the long run. A lot of them have done it a lot, and they know exactly what they need to know on the permitting process and the design process. And you know, in Anchorage and Palmer, a lot of the inspectors and stuff are the same. So they develop really good working relationships with them, and they can save a lot of time. Some utilities limit the size of the array that you can install. And they limit whether or not you can install your own generation system. So be sure to check with your utility to make sure, you know, if they'll let you install your own system or whether they'll specify equipment that you can use as well. Some places have a list of specific inverters and microinverters that they allow. They've vetted the system, and so there's a list of them that they allow, kind of like your services, your service panels on the side of your house. A lot of utilities have a list of, you know, required services. So let's go ahead and take a brief look at some specifics for solar installations with Chugach as an example. I'm going to let you do this one, actually.
Okay. Well, this is just a quick snapshot of the Chugach Electric webpage as of a week or so ago. So in general, there's 3 steps to completing the interconnection with your local utility. You need to submit an engineering request. You submit an application for net metering with the proposed system information that you want for your residents. And then you have to submit a fee to them. And then you have to put in a submission for the interconnection agreement and get a formal approval from the utility. Chugach is one of the utilities that has specific inverters and equipment that you are allowed to use in your system. And I would highly suggest that whether or not you're working with a contractor, you familiarize yourself with the regulations of the utility and how much it costs. So then it saves you a little bit of heartache on the back end, just so you're not caught unawares about how they go through the permitting process. Anchorage also has its own approval process. So you have to check with both Chugach Electric and the municipality of Anchorage. Prior to installation, if you live in an area such as Anchorage, the municipality will have additional regulations that you need to meet above and beyond what is required from the utility. You do need to obtain additional electrical and structural permits, structural calculations and inspections, and both your local utility and your municipality will need to approve and inspect the system before they permit your interconnection. So I would recommend that if you are grid connected and you're not doing an off-grid system, that you familiarize yourself with both the utility regulations and your local municipality regulations. And some of them may have a fee, some of them may not. It will all completely depend on your utility and your local municipality.
Yeah, that's right. And sorry, we're having a hard time reading some of our slides, so we're not going to read directly off our slide because the poll and the welcome note and stuff are on there, and I'm afraid to press anything. But before we talk further specifics about residential installations, we'd like to highlight that we highly recommend that solar installations should be conducted by qualified installers or electrical contractors. We've seen many installations done by very knowledgeable homeowners that have worked really well. We're close friends with people who have done their own, and we've also seen some really, really horrible ones that have failed as well. And sometimes through no fault of their own, but sometimes through very, very manageable situations. We've also seen some installations that have failed and also caused roofing and roof structures to fail, leaking and roof collapse and things like that. We understand, you know, some people are engineers, a lot of people are not engineers, some people are electricians, a lot of people are not, and some people just are willing to do the amount of research that it takes to install. Just from our perspective, and I know it's you know, a contractor telling you guys to hire contractors, and that sounds funny, but it can be very dangerous and it can be very, very life-threatening to have a solar installation fail. They routinely cause fires. They routinely shock people. They have special safety requirements for firefighters. And they should be treated like any kind of high voltage electrical system. Qualified installers and electricians who are familiar with code requirements will be able to properly size all of the parts of your systems to mitigate potential points of failure based on the National Electrical Code and local regulations. For example, we have I'm an electrical administrator, pretty familiar with the NEC, the National Electrical Code. We also have a license to work in the municipality of Anchorage, so we're very familiar with the municipality's regulations on solar arrays and installations. There's a significant hazard from undersizing electrical components and oversizing them, or wiring components incorrectly, or shorting any parts of the system without proper grounding. Grounding and bonding is a really, really big one. Many of the solar arrays around Alaska are roof mounted. There is some pole mounted ones, but it presents, like we said before, a particular hazard to dwellings because of extra weight, because of snow load, because of wind loading. So you also have reverse wind loading. And they can rip up your shingles and they can pull fasteners out if you don't use the proper sizes and the proper installation techniques. So just be aware of that. This is one of my favorite pictures ever. This is a recent public example of a improper, like poor solar installation. This is a solar installation that was done by a solar installer, but without a licensed electrical contractor. So the solar installer actually installed the electrical components of the inverter to the distribution panel on the left, and yeah, it's not the code. There's a lot of conduits hanging freely and bent off to the side and kind of putting stresses where they're not supposed to be. And actually, I got this off of I got this picture off of a group on Facebook that I'm part of that actually shares a lot of stuff like this, and this is a friend of mine actually witnessed this this after it was installed. Improper installations like these have a number of code violations, and they will actually prevent the utility from approving the interconnection. You pay these installers a lot of money and these contractors a lot of money to install these systems. And then if you don't have the right people doing the right thing, then you have to pay more. And we really want people to be happy with their installs after they get in. We want solar to work in Alaska. And also the other thing we haven't talked about is having installations like these can very negatively affect the resale value of your home because of code violations, and also just because kind of looks funny. So let's get to the meat and potatoes of residential solar. I know we've been talking a lot, but we're going to go over to the basic questions that you should ask yourself when you're looking to install solar on your property. Number one is, for me, is where would you want to install your solar array? Do you want it to be ground mounted in your backyard? Do you want it to be roof mounted? What type of solar installation do you want? Do you want like a string inverter? Do you want micro inverters for multiple PowerPoint tracking of every single module? Do you want one with batteries included? So like a multi-mode or a hybrid system is what that would be called. So the difference, the big difference between the micro inverters and the string inverters is how well you can monitor and track that system. And you should really talk to your contractor about what you're hoping to do with the system. Are you just trying to cut the cost of your electric bill, or are you trying to add storage so that you can be off grid for a little while if the power goes out? All of those things are going to have a hold sway on what kind of installation you have and how much your system is going to cost, and how long it's going to last, and how much maintenance you have to do with it. Number 4 is, how does a solar installation impact the value of the house? 5, what types of questions should I ask potential installers? And 6, how do I finance my project, and what kind of return should I expect? There's 2 general mounting options for solar panels that we see on residential homes in Alaska. The one on the left is obviously a roof mounted system, and a ground mounted one on the right. So what's the difference? What am I going to be paying for when I choose one of these systems? And we're going to, on the next slide, go over the advantages and disadvantages. Go over the roof mounted system first, since that's the majority of residential systems in Alaska. Roof mounted systems are constrained by roof space. That's the big one. So you can only put an array on your house that will fit on your roof, and you also have to have like places for fire departments to walk in case there's a fire, and you have to have special disconnects and stuff for that kind of installation. So it includes any roof clearances needed for things like chimneys, vents, skylights, clearance spaces for fire personnel. The current age of your roof is a really big and critical constraint. Solar panels typically come with a 20-year performance warranty, with the whole system typically warranties from 15 to 20 years. So if your roof needs to be replaced prior to the expected system life, you may be looking at a really big cost to remove and replace the system. Is your roof new, and has it had an existing warranty? A solar installation really could void the warranty of your roof, depending on your installer. However, this type of system is generally cheaper and easier, to install, and uses spaces that you wouldn't use otherwise. So that's a big pro. It doesn't take up a bunch of land space in your backyard. It reduces your home's thermal load in the summer. And then ground mounted installations, these tend to be, they can be significantly more expensive than roof mounted systems, and not just depending on, whether you want to install tracking and stuff like that. But these tend to be more expensive than roof mounted systems due to the additional ground mounting system and earthwork needed to install. Burying electrical lines is always more expensive than mounting them on the side of your home. And then everybody knows that in Alaska, earthwork is not cheap. You also need to do regular maintenance on the space around the system. Can't let trees grow and root into the base. You can't let trees grow and shade your system. Shading is a huge issue in Alaska, especially in the shoulder seasons. Systems that are on the ground are also more vulnerable to vandalism. If you live in kind of a rougher area, we see a lot of ground mounted systems like in rural Alaska. Sometimes kids don't have a whole bunch to do, and they're really good targets for rocks or baseball bats or other toys. These systems aren't constrained by roof space, which is really nice. You can put a huge system in your backyard if you want to, and you can orient them so they're optimized for the position of the sun. You could put trackers on them so that you can get great irradiance and perfect irradiance all day. So you can actually save a lot more energy because they'll actually track the position of the sun with like a built-in solar tracker. And so that kind of makes them more efficient, although they are obviously more expensive to install. So you kind of have to do a cost benefit analysis to see which one will work best for you. Why don't you do this one? You're the battery person.
Sure. So a lot of people ask, do I need batteries with my system? And the answer is no. No, you don't necessarily need batteries. It's, do you want batteries? So if you live in an off-grid house, or if you plan on having backup power in case of outages, you may want to consider incorporating battery energy storage to your installation to maximize your potential generation capacity and provide a measure of resiliency to your home. If you live in an off-grid situation, your battery storage will allow you to run your appliances when it's cloudy or overnight. It just gives you a little bit of a buffer zone. Battery storage isn't just limited to off-grid situations. You can utilize them in grid-connected applications to store and release energy when your solar panel production doesn't meet the amount of load that you need. Since the utility usually purchases excess electricity at a lower rate than what they charge customers, you can optimize your dispatch to realize larger savings over the life of your project. So if you would like to incorporate batteries, which ones should you choose? And there's a bunch of different options out there. We're going to cover the 4 main buzzwords that you'll hear in the industry. So lithium ion and lead acid batteries circled here in red because they're generally the most commonly used up here. They are the most common batteries typically used in the industry. Lithium ion has a longer lifespan than typical lead acid batteries, and they require very little maintenance, and they're lighter. They are more expensive, but they can be discharged to a greater depth. So more of that space is usable, and they have a longer lifespan. Lead acid batteries are the cheaper option, but they do require a lot of maintenance, and they have a relatively lower usable percentage of stored energy, so 50% compared to the 80% of lithium ion. Any lower than 50% will negatively impact the lifespan of the lead acid batteries. So it kind of depends on what type of system you really want to run. Flow batteries and nickel cadmium or NiCad batteries is another term that you hear. Those are not as commonly used. Flow batteries are a relatively newer technology. Flow batteries can be discharged at 100% of its storage capacity, but they are more expensive than the other options just because they're new and they're not quite as common. And they occupy a larger space since they have a smaller storage capacity for each one. Nickel cadmium is used in more industrial applications. They can operate at very extreme temperatures, but they're generally discouraged in residential applications because of the toxicity of cadmium. And you can't backhaul it, and you can't recycle it very easily or swap it out. So even though nickel cadmium and flow batteries have a higher efficiency and better operating range, residential applications tend to lean more towards lithium ion and lead acid in general. So now that we've kind of covered the type of batteries, how much battery storage do you actually need? And the answer is it depends. It completely depends. It depends on how many hours you want your system to be able to run on stored energy, your expected energy consumption, so what you're running in your house, the type of battery that you choose, and the operating temperature range for your battery. When you have this conversation with your installer, you really want to be aware of, well, I want my house to be able to run for X amount of hours just on battery, and I want to be able to run X, Y, and Z, or you want to look at your bill and say, well, this is how much I typically run on an average day.
Can I?
Yeah.
Keep on? Another big thing is batteries add a huge cost to your install. So if you're looking to just simply net meter and pay off your power bill, and maybe decrease your electrical usage, batteries probably aren't really for you. And I say that with, what I'm trying to say is, if you're just trying to cut costs and stuff like that, batteries probably aren't the way to go. If you're trying to spend some time off grid for like a lot of homeowners out here in Palmer and Wasilla want hybrid systems or multi-mode systems, because we have a lot of power outages in the winter, and they want to be able to charge those batteries and use that energy in the winter, but also they have like a backup generator attached to that will charge the batteries when they drop below a certain level. So those are some kinds of things that you can do with batteries. But yeah, if you're just trying to kind of cover the cost of your electric bill for part of the year, batteries probably aren't the greatest option for you. They're very expensive. Oh, your favorite part. Here you go.
Yeah.
This is you.
So we're going to talk a little bit about, well, what happens to my house when I install solar on it. I'm putting this $20,000 system on my house. What happens to the value of my property? So these are some national numbers. There hasn't been a study done in Alaska, but NREL and Zillow have conducted a nationwide study on residential sales of properties that have had solar installed. And these are the average financial impacts of solar installation. So for every dollar that you save on your electricity bill, your home value is expected to increase $20. That means that if your system saves about $700 per year in electricity, your properties average an increase in sales price by about $14,000. Buyers will pay about 4.1% more for a property with solar, and homes tend to sell faster by about 20%. So there is a demand for homes with solar installed. Unfortunately, Alaska does not have a tax exemption for the increase in your property value. We'll go over that a little bit later. So you will have to pay slightly more in taxes. Your array will also lose efficiency over its rated lifespan, and so it'll lose value over time. So we'll go a little bit over how to evaluate the financial investment shortly, but this is just an overview of the valuation of your home and what you should expect in terms of resale value and taxes.
We're getting close to the end. A few more slides.
So now that we've talked about the types of systems and some of the requirements, so let's just briefly talk about who you're hiring to do the job. If you're going to attempt to do the installation yourself and you consider yourself a qualified installer, this section is not for you, but we'll go over it anyway. So there's a lot of installers out there. We're going to go over how to find a qualified contractor, how to ask the right questions for a project that'll last you 25 years. Please do not be afraid to ask them questions, whether it's basic or complicated. It's a 25-year investment for you, and you should know exactly what you're buying and the terms of the purchase.
Also, we like talking to homeowners who are very interested in their systems. So as a contractor, when somebody asks you a bunch of questions. It shows interest in what they're doing as well. And we love answering those questions and talking to the people that we're installing these systems for, because we love seeing people that are involved in renewables. We really want this to work. We really want you know, our dependence on natural gas and oil to go down. And this is really big. Getting that knowledge out there is huge, even for contractors. So you want me to do this one, or you want to do it?
Sure. So if you're hiring someone to do your solar installation, the first thing you want to check for is that your contractor is licensed, bonded, and insured to do solar installations. They're going to need a state license and a municipal license to do the work in the area that you are located in, although some areas do not require a separate municipal license. You will need to ensure that they have all the proper certifications to do your project, whether your installer is licensed to do electrical work themselves, or if they're planning on subcontracting the electrical portion out to a contractor. So why is that important? If you install a system without a licensed contractor, this may void the performance warranty of different components of your system. So if you are purchasing inverters or panels or wire or whatever components of your system, they may have a factory warranty that requires you to have a licensed contractor install it in order for that to be valid. And you will want to check on that. When your prospective contractor conducts their initial site visit, keep an eye out on what kind of site visit they do. Do they just kind of do a ballpark measurement of your roof and install location, or are they a little more thorough? Do they look at your electrical system, or are they planning for a subcontractor to come and do a follow-up site visit? Are they looking at the inside of the attic of your roof and taking measurements for the mounting of the panels, and are they looking for potential sources of shading that might impact the output of the array that you're putting on your roof? Warranties. Make sure that they provide a warranty and read over the terms of their warranty. It's typical for solar installers to give a 5 to 10 year workmanship warranty on top of the factory warranties. I know there's some installers in town that warranty the system for the entire rated lifespan. You may also want to check your homeowner's insurance company to see whether your installation would be covered under your pre-existing insurance policy. But the factory warranties guarantee your panel and inverter performance over the rated life of the component. So there's a couple of different layers. You've got your installer warranty, you've got your factory warranty, and then you may have your homeowner's insurance policy that may already cover the components of your system if you have it covered under your insurance. System monitoring. Will your contractor let you actively monitor the system, and what type of monitoring do they offer? Some systems have full online portals and phone apps that you can monitor, so you can see how it's outputting or if there are any issues with the system, and ask them if this is an option and if it costs extra or if it's included in their original cost. How responsive are your contractors to follow-up questions, or are they going to be willing to answer maintenance questions after the installation is done? That's a pretty big one. You might have an issue or two the first year or two that the system is running. There's always a bunch of hiccups that happen. Are they responsive? And are they including, this is the big one, are they including the costs of permitting, licensing, and engineering in their quote? Because that can usually come up to about an extra $1,000. So a little.
Or more if you're in Anchorage. Another big one that we didn't really talk about in here for the follow-up, just as an example, I just went to a system that was installed last year, and I think what happened was maybe the contractor went out of business. They installed the system, and the homeowner called me and said, hey, it's spring, there's really great sunlight, it's nice and cool, I should be getting a lot of energy from this array, but it's showing zeros on everything, and I can't get a hold of the contractor. They won't respond. And I went out there, and I basically just turned the array off and on, and it started producing again. It was just that simple. They lost, you know, who knows, 20 kW of electricity savings in a shoulder season when it really matters, just because they couldn't get a hold of their contractor to come out and just flip a switch off and on. It just lost communication with the grid, and it wouldn't output anymore. And it wasn't working for weeks. So really making sure that your contractor has been around for a little while, maybe. They've done a few systems here and there. They kind of know how they operate. They really back their equipment that they're installing, and it's not just some new technology that they learned how to use. Is really important. Do your research when you're hiring a contractor, just like any other contractor, plumbing contractor. I know it's really hard to find contractors right now, because there's just a lot of construction going on, and there's a lot of money in the state right now, and it's really hard to find people. But this is a really big investment, and it's worth it to wait for a really good contractor to do it.
So this is just kind of a brief look over a typical system monitoring app through Enphase, which is commonly used by a lot of installers and homeowners. So this monitoring system shows how much your system has produced in the day, how much you've consumed and sold to the local utility, and how much of your battery you've used. So monitoring apps tend to give you some visibility into the state of your panels and the performance of your system over time. You know, is your system performing as you expected it should? So we're just gonna zoom really quickly through the next sessions, because I know we're cutting short on time. Yes, we do know that solar installations cost a lot of money. So we're gonna go briefly over, you know, how do you evaluate whether or not this is gonna be economically feasible for you. This is gonna be a simplified example, and we're gonna go briefly over some potential tax incentives. So we're going to use a recent electricity bill from MEA to look at how you can project potential savings for your grid connected systems. So there's two sections here that are highlighted. The first on the left being your electrical usage history and the charges associated on the right. If you are connected to a local utility, each unit of electricity that you offset using solar also offsets the amount of money you would have paid your utility for that amount of energy. So MEA, as you can see up here, charges about 13 cents per kilowatt hour for its first step. So if you generate all of your electricity in June here for 1,063 kilowatt hours, you would be saving roughly $140 for that month. And that doesn't include any excess generation that your solar array may produce and that they would purchase from you. They generally purchase at a lower rate than they would sell it to you for. So you can use those numbers along with data from your utility usage history and the purchase rate, which they publish, to calculate how much you will approximately save. Note that in Alaska, roof-mounted systems will typically have snow coverage between late November and early March, depending on which region you live in. And that may prevent the system from producing. And those are just some kind of key guidelines that you can use to kind of evaluate the finances of your system. I'm going to skip over this federal tax credit because I think that has already been discussed. But a general rule of thumb for the current cost of installation in Anchorage and the Mat-Su borough is around $3 to $5 per watt. And a system out in rural areas will run closer to like $6 to $8 per watt installed. So your actual cost will kind of vary depending on the system type and the size and complexity, whether you install battery, ground mounted. It might cost higher than a simple grid direct system. So there's two pieces of legislation that might impact the finances of your project: the federal tax credit, which was covered prior to this, and this Alaska statute, which is a little bit of a neutered statute, unfortunately. The Alaska statute allows municipalities to exempt any property tax increases due to the increased valuation of your house from installing solar or any renewable energy system. Unfortunately, we don't know of any municipality that has created a tax exemption, but the bones are there in Alaska for municipalities to enact legislation themselves. And we're hoping that they will. In the lower 48, a lot of states have created blanket legislation that any property tax increases will not cause an increase in your property taxes. And I think that wraps up our sharing. Any questions at this time?
I'm just going to jump in really quick and just let you all know there's a comment from Mark from earlier. I don't know if you saw it in the chat, just saying, don't forget the loads for air source heat pumps. So I don't know if you, I know this is solar, but I don't know if you wanted to speak to that at all. I think Mark was just excitedly reminding everyone, including you, Kolt and Amanda, not to forget.
That was a very direct, he knows I'm very into the heat pumps.
Awesome.
Yeah, and thank you for reminding me, by the way, because I didn't want to talk a whole bunch about this because I was really trying to just concentrate on it. What I think he's trying to say is, I think this came up like in the savings section when we were talking about the offsets for the loading. And correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, and you're still on here, but you offset a lot of the cost of like the air source heat pumps and stuff like that. With solar. Is that what you were talking about, Mark? Feel free to chime in.
Yeah. So, you know, the work I'm doing, I'm an energy rater and I carry a couple of different kinds of air source heat pumps. And I'm finding that the greatest and best use of all the solar you're making is heating your house and your hot water. It's not lighting your house. That's low-hanging fruit. Go to LEDs. Get heat pumps and start using them effectively. It's going to be free energy to operate them.
Yeah.
At least 8 months of the year.
Yeah, and especially if you have like split pumps and stuff like that, you have built-in air conditioning, right? And when you use air conditioning is the best solar irradiance, you know, it's the hottest time of the year. So you have really high solar irradiance, you have a potentially high electric usage from your split pump because you're air conditioning your home. And another time is in the shoulder seasons when you start to heat your homes for the year. You know, in the spring when you have good solar irradiance for 7-8 hours a day, and you're still heating your home and stuff like that in the morning, that solar in the early afternoon and the evenings is going to offset a lot of the cost from the heating in the mornings when it's cooler, and in the evenings as well. Same with the fall. Those are the shoulder seasons, spring and fall. You have a lot of solar radiation. The temperature is low outside. You're going to start heating, and you're also going to be cooling your solar modules, which allows them to produce more electricity with less, you know, solar resource. So yeah, thanks for reminding me, Mark. I didn't even think to put that in here. And that's a really good point.
Yeah, I got to get going, but I'm going to send you some more information. I just picked up a product that does heat storage for my heat pumps.
Okay, great.
It's awesome. I'll send you some info overnight. Gotta run. Bye.
All right, see you later. Thanks, Mark. Is there any other questions? Can we help anybody out?
All right. Well, here are some other useful resources. If you want to try to size your own solar system for your roof, PV Watts is a really great tool that you can kind of size your system visually. And then DOE has some great published guides for homeowners going solar and how to finance your residential system. I think another question actually just came in. Do you see any chance that battery storage costs will come down in the future and be useful for homeowners for power outages? Yes, actually, the federal government has just invested in a $8 million facility in California doing solely battery energy storage studies. So we are expecting the costs to come down. And I think there's also a large investment in the IRA for specifically battery recycling centers and technologies. I think there's a secondary question, and if so, can a solar array connected to the grid be retrofitted with storage? Yeah.
This is my favorite one. This is actually my favorite type of system. It's called a multi-mode system, and absolutely, yes, you can. Actually, this is, if you're doing more than just trying to offset your electrical cost from the utility, please do this. This is there's awesome inverters for this, but yes, the short answer, you can retrofit it with storage and be attached to the grid. They're called multi-mode systems. They're called hybrid inverters, and what they do is you can actually, they're a big string inverter that mounts to your size of your house, so you don't have a bunch of micro inverters behind the modules. You have a string inverter next to your service panel or someplace close, and you can actually run a couple circuits that are separate from your solar modules down into your basement or another storage area, and you can have a battery bank down there. And while you're producing solar, it will work just like a regular grid direct system. And if your usage is satisfied, you'll actually use solar energy and it will invert it into usable electricity for your home loads to use. And with the excess, it'll charge your batteries. So you can do both things at the same time. You can also connect a backup generator to that multi-mode inverter. And if your power goes out, you can use the storage from your battery, or if it's sunny out for some reason and your power goes out, it happens every once in a while, I guess. It will actually use solar electricity to power your house and charge your batteries. And if that battery drops below a certain percent, those batteries drop below a certain percentage, it will automatically kick on a generator. It's amazing technology. It's been around for a little while, but not kind of as smart as it is now. And it's my favorite system. I love it. You can look more into Solarc, I think is the one that we really like. The Solarc multi-mode inverter. And I see another, if you don't have a basement or a garage, can you have this type of system? And where can the batteries live? You can have battery storage containers. Yeah, you're welcome, Ariana. Sorry if I butchered your name. I apologize. Sue, if you don't have a basement or a garage, you can have that type of system. They make battery storage containers. They make little storage sheds. I've seen these things live in a small plastic, like I saw one time and I thought it was great. It lived in one of those little plastic Costco like little storage shacks on the side of somebody's house, and they had a battery storage container in there, and the vent for the battery system just went outside in a safe spot. It kept the snow off. Most of the battery systems have like little mini heater systems that you can put in there that uses some of the yeah, they do. The battery systems come with little heaters that you put into the battery storage container, and it uses a little bit of the electricity to kind of save those. And you do still have to do like regular maintenance when you store those things at -30. I would say probably -30 is pretty rough on batteries if you don't have those battery heaters, but almost every system like Blue Planet, those are integrated into the batteries. What other battery technologies did we look at recently that we saw? I can't remember the name of the battery company that we saw that has them integrated into it, but if you're looking at installing those battery systems, look for the internal battery heating management unit, I think is what it's called. And if anybody really knows the name of that, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's something similar to that. If you want to ask me more about it, I'll definitely help you look up that information at another time also. I'm sorry if it was mentioned earlier, but will we have access to the slides for the links? I don't know, will we?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So everyone who registered will receive the recording of this entire class. So you'll be set.
Great.
All right, if there are no other questions, and I don't see anybody typing, we're gonna stop sharing here and then turn it back over to Carrie and Mindy.
Yeah, we left our information on these slides too, so feel free to contact us if you have any questions. We love chatting with people who are interested. So one of our favorite things to talk about.
Awesome. Thank you, Kolt. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Maddie. Thank you, Jamie, for a great presentation today. Before those who are tuned in jump off, if you would take a moment and answer our exit poll. This is a poll that's meant to be shown. This will just give us an indication of what you thought about the class today, how we could improve it, and what we can do better in the future. So if you could take that before you launch off, that's great. And I think Kolt and Amanda are going to stick around. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to the Cold Climate Housing Research Center, Sunstone Electric, Information Insights, or the Department of Energy. Thanks so much for being here tonight.